Star Trucker is basically a truck simulator in space, and honestly, I think it's pretty darn close to gaming perfection. You drive a space big rig, haul cargo, and travel through warp gates across a galaxy of interesting destinations. Clearly, I've entered my dad gaming years, and I couldn't be happier. Let's check this out. Now, firstly, this is an indie title that just launched on Steam and Xbox a few days ago, and it's deservedly racking up mostly positive reviews. I've been following this project for a while, and pretty much from the moment I booted up the game, I was hooked. Trucking games are very much about the vibe of the experience, and Star Trucker understands this well, luring you in with an incredible country folk soundtrack that makes even the most remote reaches of space feel like home. You start off with a tutorial on repairing your space truck via spacewalking, and when I say space truck, well, I mean exactly that. Your ship is essentially a futuristic rendition of the classic semi-truck cab with massive rocket engines instead of wheels, a maglock hitching system, and a spacious interior complete with an airlock, spacesuit, and a leather captain's chair. And this chair gives you access to all of the space truck systems, like the thrusters, warp drive, interior air conditioning, the actual maglock hitch, cruise control, and a ton more bells and whistles. All of the interior systems also have physical buttons and levers that you interact with directly to control everything. You also get two multifunction displays, aka MFDs, that can toggle through a variety of options like your mirrors, docking camera, and your power readout. And their functionality isn't just for show, especially with the power readouts. They have a pretty important purpose. All of your ship systems like gravity, O2 generation, and propulsion have power modules that you have to periodically replace. So using an MFD to keep track of them is pretty important. And if you lose power on something like your gravity system, you'll have to float around the cab and replace its power module while the rest of your small cargo begins to float around as well. You'll then have to physically interact with the panel for each system to extract its power module and then replace it with a fresh one, which you can buy from vendors. There's also other systems like control boards that control a lot of these systems, and they can get damaged when you collide with something, or your ship gets shocked, or you receive a solar flare, and so there's all kinds of other things that you might have to repair and replace. And honestly, I really enjoyed the maintenance aspect here, not just the maintaining part, but the fact that generally speaking, you don't want to have to keep replacing parts, so it makes you want to take care of your space truck and not crash into stuff or avoid hazards. I also really just enjoyed the physical aspect of the components. You can actually organize your cab, and it's not just a UI system. You can move stuff around, stack them on shelves, and even pack them in containers for safer storage. It really satisfies that sort of item management Tetris itch that other games have in abundance, but it's just cooler doing it in 3D space. Now, once you actually get going, the flight controls, sound design, and gorgeous space vistas take over. The space truck handles like, well, pretty much exactly what you think a space truck might feel like. It's big, slow, kind of floaty, but also in a good way. The controls, at least with a controller, are intuitive and easy to pick up. A small nitpick is that there isn't an ability to strafe your truck without also changing the space truck's bearing, so you basically always have to turn it one way or another to change your direction. And while that might keep the movement a little more accessible for the average gamer and sort of hit that trucking vibe a little bit more, for me, I was hoping for maybe a little bit more control there. Then again, I am approaching this game from the space sim side and not the truck simulator side. Now, unfortunately, Star Trucker doesn't have flight stick or HOTAS support just yet. The devs are working on it though, and they have an experimental build testing it out, but they're unhappy with the ship control interactions right now and are going to keep working on it until everything feels like it's in a good place. So even if you could get it to detect your joystick, you'd have to set up some sort of input emulation and bind all the controls there. It would be a pain in the butt. So basically, if you need to fly your space truck with a joystick, you may want to wait until that feature is implemented. And while the lack of joystick support might annoy me on paper, once I actually started hauling, I really didn't even give the controls a second thought. The space truck is responsive enough to make sharp turns and dock with fragile cargo while still feeling like a blunt instrument of destruction when it's at cruising speeds. Most of the time when traveling between destinations, you can basically just floor it without too much concern because, well, there's a lot of space in space. If you wanted to try a game like Euro Truck Simulator without the anxiety of staying in your lane or missing cars that are trying to pass right by you, Star Trucker is the game for you. The game also replaces a lot of the typical space game jargon and measurements with more grounded terms, which is kind of quaint. Instead of traveling in meters or miles per second, your speed is measured in good old-fashioned miles per hour. You don't travel thousands of light years, you travel in tens of miles. You can, of course, change the units of measurement to kilometers if you prefer measuring speed and distance with a system that's, well, a little more metric, but really I like the vibe of the miles. And in case you haven't noticed yet, Star Trucker is not a hardcore sim, it's much more of a vibe game. You're cosplaying a space trucker, not sweating over speeding fines and merging into busy traffic as a 70-foot-long road monster. That said, the game can still deliver plenty of tension, especially if you go looking for it. If you venture too far away from highways, which are basically paths marked with road signs, then you have to navigate debris fields that can damage your space truck. And when you get things like hull breaches or dead power cells, your MFDs will flash a warning on the relevant page letting you know what's going on. There's of course a decent progression system in the game with two main skill trees for hauling. There's time sensitive and fragile goods. If you're not fast enough or drive recklessly, you can incur kind of big penalties on your payouts while also missing out on the bonuses. I ended up taking the fragile cargo track, but you could earn enough skill points to work on both skill trees. And these skill points can be used to unlock new bonuses and upgrades for your space truck, like long haul delivery options and increased carry capacity. Now, generally speaking, the core gameplay is exactly what you would expect if you've played a trucking game before. Hauling trailers of cargo around. And in that regard, it is still pretty straightforward. You use the docking camera to back up into trailers and hitch them with the maglock, then you plot a course using the warp gates between destinations, and the meat and potatoes of the game is really just flying through these destinations, which are basically space stations orbiting planets or out in open space with various service facilities floating around them. Once you arrive at the destination for your cargo delivery, you have to find the marked drop zone and deliver the haul by stopping in the designated area and then unhitching the trailer. Certain destinations also have different restrictions on goods, and there's some fun light economy gameplay in there with different pricing for goods at different destinations. When you enter a new destination, there's a chance that the local authorities will scan you for legal goods, and I'm sure this kind of gameplay is going to evolve in more interesting ways down the line. You also have to weigh in periodically at weigh stations, which I find kind of funny. And of course, you'll need to refuel and all that stuff. But these interactions are pretty simple. You kind of park in a spot, wait for a prompt or something to happen, and then carry on. It's all a little hand wavy, but considering how repetitive it could be to have to manually do all of that, I actually appreciate that a lot of it's more or less automated. Now, tying the whole experience together is honestly some incredible sound design. The hum of your space truck as it barrels through space is relaxing, but also meaty at the same time. When you come to a stop, your rockets turn off, and the sound they make when they reignite has a lot of power to it. We of course have the great soundtrack, and it also ducks the audio when you're getting messages over your CB radio.
I'll let you know if you're coming through.
You can actually hold the radio mic in your hand and choose your responses too, which is quite cool. It also has pretty good directional audio cues, so you can actually tell when something is above or below you, which of course is very important for navigating a truck through 3D space. Now, the game does have a story mode that walks you through everything with multiple characters telling you where to go and how to do things, but eventually the whole galaxy just opens up and you'll be free to take on the procedurally generated cargo jobs. There's also multiple difficulty options and a custom mode that lets you tweak everything from fines to fuel consumption. Now, honestly, I just got into the game, so this isn't really a deep review, but more of a first impressions. And if it's not apparent yet, I'm really enjoying the game. It's just sim enough to be challenging while remaining accessible to the average Sunday gamer who just wants to hop on for a few hours and accomplish something. The biggest thing on my wish list for the game, aside from HOTAS support, is a VR mode. The way you interact with the space truck controls right now by looking in their direction just seems like a natural fit for VR, and I could see it being a super immersive VR game. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on space hauling. Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this first impressions video, leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Up next, check out my video on being a space trucker in Star Citizen. Bit of a different vibe over there, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.